Do you see significant change ahead in COVID policy, and what would that mean in a broader sense?
Now, what we have seen so far, Timur, are a series of modest measures in a variety of dimensions. If you think about what they've indicated in terms of pulling back any of the zero COVID strategy related measures, those are modest, not insignificant, but still modest measures. Likewise, in terms of monetary policy actions to support the economy, we've seen some modest measures. And unfortunately, I don't think that these are going to cut it, because right now we have a situation where growth momentum does seem to be stalling. And in particular, we are seeing significant disruptions to various parts of the economy. And on top of that, I think both consumer and business confidence have taken a hit. So unless the government can lay out a clear path, both in terms of COVID-related policies, but also macroeconomic stimulus policies, and of course, related policies concerning the housing market and so on, I don't think it's going to be easy to get out of the rough patch that the Chinese economy is in right now.
It's also not easy to actually determine what in truth is going on. I mean, the Western media does tend to like to paint the situation in China as being out of control. They like to push up the strength of the protests. I have no idea how strong those protests are. Do you think they are as bad as is being made out? And do you think that, to what extent do you think they affect the policy thinking in Beijing?
You're right, Timur, that it's not easy right now to get a clear read on what is happening in China, because I think we do get a very partial picture, either through the Western media and, of course, through the domestic media. It's even more limited. But certainly what one sees of the reporting in terms of the extent of the protests, in terms of the numbers involved, in terms of how widespread it is, I think it is really striking a nerve in Beijing. And it is sort of interesting that the leadership seems to have allowed at least some room for the protests to play out, perhaps to allow some degree of venting at the displeasure of the policies. The big question is whether the message is getting through to the top leadership about the amount of anger and frustration that seems to be involved. At least in terms of the economic data, it's hard to imagine that the message is not getting across, that this is being quite disruptive. The tricky issue for the Chinese right now is how to create a graceful exit from the zero COVID strategy without creating additional disruptions, because if they do open up in a very significant way very quickly, that could lead to an increase in case numbers and perhaps also even in hospitalizations and possibly even deaths, and that's certainly not an outcome that would play well. So I think a sort of calibrated opening where they take some face-saving measures to roll back some of the measures but not reverse them entirely is probably what we will see.